Hello everyone, today I want to talk to you about a joke by Musk. He said he would cut $2 trillion for the United States. In the end, it was only reduced to $160 billion. Additionally, Trump's biggest contribution was zeroing out the budget of the National Endowment for Democracy, NED, eliminating the annual $80 million funding for disrupting Hong Kong and mainland China. For the Trump administration to engage in a trade war with China, the financial strength of the United States itself is crucial. On May 2nd, Trump announced a budget proposal for the fiscal year 2026, suggesting a reduction of $163 billion in federal spending. Since the numbers for spending cuts and deficit reduction are far below expectations, it raises doubts about where Trump's promise to make America great again actually begins. During his campaign, Trump boasted about thoroughly addressing America's underlying weaknesses, namely the massive trade deficit and the huge fiscal deficit. He imposed excessive tariffs in an attempt to reduce the trade deficit and appointed Musk as the Minister of Efficiency Promotion to cut the fiscal deficit. However, the side effects of these measures seem to outweigh their actual effectiveness. On May 2nd, the White House Office of Management and Budget released the budget proposal for the fiscal year 2026, starting this October. Compared to the levels set in 2025, the planned budget will increase defense spending by 13%, reaching a record $1.01 trillion. Homeland security spending is also set to increase by 65 bits. Non-defense discretionary spending will be cut by 23%, dropping to the lowest level since 2017. According to a report by the Wall Street Journal, Federal Reserve officials stated that Trump's budget proposal will cut what he considers wasteful projects, such as reducing funding for climate and green energy projects. According to these officials, Trump's proposal will continue his existing political agenda, one of which aims to eliminate the so-called DEI agenda of diversity, equity, and inclusion. It cancels the Biden administration's planned allocations and research funding for clean energy goals. As for the increased spending items, Trump proposes to increase funding for border security, defense, aviation, and railway safety, while delaying funds for the military and law enforcement. Trump's proposal increases defense spending by 1,300 bits, raising it to 3.2 bits of the US GDP. The New York Times says that Musk and SpaceX are the big winners of President Trump's new budget proposal to increase defense spending. Firstly, Trump plans to allocate initial funding for the development and deployment of a missile defense system called the Golden Dome, which is aimed at creating a new generation of missile defense systems for the United States. And Musk's space exploration company will play a significant role in the construction of this system, potentially securing new contracts worth billions of dollars. Secondly, Trump advocates for strengthening national security and strategic advantage by establishing US dominance in space. This will also create new business opportunities for the space exploration company. Although the budgets of other federal government departments have been significantly reduced, the budget related to Musk has increased substantially, which can be considered very good news for him. And the budget proposal for the fiscal year 2026 released by Trump on May 2nd is only a brief version, with the document not disclosing predictions about government debt, fiscal deficit, or taxes. In the fiscal year 2025, which spans from last October to this March, the budget deficit of the US federal government has already exceeded $1.3 trillion. The figures are astonishing. It is expected that the annual fiscal deficit is likely to exceed $2 trillion. But the new budget only proposes to cut $163 billion in federal spending. How can this possibly control the rising fiscal deficit? The lower limit on spending cuts in the new US budget is related to Musk's Efficiency Promotion Department not meeting its reduction targets. On April 30th, Musk attended a White House cabinet meeting to bid farewell to Trump, stating that he would reduce his work with the government thereafter. He also mentioned that the Efficiency Promotion Department saved $160 billion in spending this year, but this falls far short of the $2 trillion in cuts he promised before taking office. According to statistics, layoffs, rehires, productivity losses, and large-scale pay raises for thousands of employees related to the Efficiency Promotion Department will cost over $135 billion in this fiscal year. This means that this department might actually lead to an increase in the net expenditure of the US federal government in the current fiscal year. It is noteworthy that Musk had already begun to downplay the initial promises in an interview this January, saying, "If we strive to cut spending by $2 trillion, then we might actually achieve a $1 trillion cut." But the result is still far below this figure, with only a $160 billion cut, which is completely unexpected. It is evident that talking is very easy, but doing it is quite difficult. The US federal government is a money-devouring beast. How easy is it to move it? However, Musk has made contributions to China, as he has cut back on institutions funded by the US government that support numerous anti-China organizations. Trump's new budget proposal significantly cuts U.S. foreign aid project expenditures, including completely eliminating funding for the National Endowment for Democracy, or NED, closing the U.S. Agency for International Development and reallocating its funds, as well as canceling U.S. investments in the Global Fund that helps developing countries address climate change. The funding for NED being reduced to zero is certainly good news. Last month, the U.S. government announced the merger of the U.S. Agency for International Development into the State Department, which already triggered a wave of layoffs. Although the so-called cuts to international aid funding come from various aspects of the budget proposal, many of them are broadly categorized as part of national and international project funding. This category of expenditure has drastically decreased from nearly $60 billion to $10 billion, which is a reduction of 84%. The main mission of the National Endowment for Democracy, NED, is to promote democracy and political freedom overseas. But this time, it has lost its entire annual funding of $320 million, effectively shutting down the organization. The Trump administration accused NED of spreading false information while combating disinformation, claiming it blacklisted conservative media. Moreover, the leader of the Office of Government Efficiency, Musk, had previously criticized NED as a scam. NED had previously sued the federal government to oppose the reduction of its funding. In its lawsuit, NED stated that its funding is dedicated to the most challenging environments, including organizations opposing authoritarian regimes, to promote global democratic governance, human rights, and political freedom. NED claims to have funded a total of over 1,300 projects for these organizations, indicating that this organization is a driving force behind global color revolutions. NED has long been involved in the Hong Kong opposition movement behind the scenes. As early as April 2014, on the eve of the Occupy Central movement, Martin Lee and Anson Chan visited the United States and attended a seminar hosted by NED Vice President Louisa Greve. NED has a deep relationship with Martin Lee. As early as 1997, the year of Hong Kong's handover, NED awarded Martin Lee their annual Democracy Award, indicating that NED had already been involved in Hong Kong affairs from the beginning. According to a report by Radio Free Asia, one of the organizations affected by U.S. government measures since the shutdown of the United States Agency for International Development in July, numerous organizations worldwide that rely on U.S. government support are now in dire straits. Just this March, dozens of non-governmental organizations and research institutions in the U.S. focusing on human rights and labor rights in China and Hong Kong, including Freedom House, China Labor Watch, and the World Uyghur Congress, were forced to cease operations or significantly downsize. Most Hong Kong organizations in exile overseas have also lost funding support. Many Hong Kong groups and so-called independent researchers are also affected and are urgently seeking alternative funding to survive.
Joey Siu, wanted for colluding with foreign forces, once worked for a U.S. nonprofit. She told Radio Free Asia that many human rights groups will struggle to find new funding soon, severely disrupting operations. Siu added that Hong Kong groups in the UK may also face cuts due to U.S. budget shifts, putting them in a tough spot.
According to public information, the NED under the U.S. Agency for International Development funded 55 projects related to mainland China, Hong Kong, Tibet, and others in the 2023 fiscal year, involving nearly $10 million. For Hong Kong alone, it's just a few $100,000. This shows that even after the enactment of the Hong Kong law, the NED still funds organizations in Hong Kong, and these Hong Kong organizations funded by the NED have been advocating for sanctions against Hong Kong in the U.S. over the past few years. For example, the Hong Kong Democracy Council helped facilitate the passage of the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act and the Hong Kong Policy Act in the U.S. These acts authorize the U.S. government to sanction officials from mainland China and Hong Kong. Additionally, the Hong Kong Freedom Committee Foundation published a research report in the middle of last year, smearing Hong Kong as a hub for Russia, Iran, and North Korea to evade sanctions. Subsequently, this document became an important reference for the U.S. Congress in dealing with Hong Kong. The NED has long been seen by Beijing as a major instigator of anti-China and destabilizing activities in Hong Kong, and now this black hand has been severed. To summarize, first, the end of the NED is a good thing for both Hong Kong and the country. There is one less foreign hand interfering in Hong Kong's affairs. Second, with the end of the NED, the death knell has also sounded for Hong Kong people in exile abroad. As some netizens say, their dog food has disappeared, and these people lack other means of livelihood. Third, do not assume that Musk is a Chinese undercover agent. Trump's crackdown on these organizations not only targets his political opponents, but also reflects his unwillingness to spend big money on foreign color revolutions. Instead, he prefers to shamelessly ask foreign governments for money directly. American officials can even ask other countries to directly transfer money to the U.S. Treasury. The fact that they can say such things shows that a blatantly open American era has arrived. If the Hong Kong opposition is still talking about democracy and freedom with American officials, they must be out of their minds.